The sound of the arena thundered through Velik's quarters as he sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the wall. Outside, 60,000 spectators roared for blood. His blood. The human's fingers traced the edge of the combat bracelet locked around his wrist, the mark of the Kavari Empire's most valuable fighting property. "Final call for contestant 7734, the metallic voice announced through the speakers. "Approach the arena gates in 30 seconds or forfeit your life." Velik didn't move. 6 months in the Kavari fighting pits had been enough. 27 kills to his name. 27 lives he hadn't wanted to take. The Kavari had expected savagery when they captured humans from the frontier colonies, but Velik had surprised them with his skill. What they hadn't counted on was his conscience finally breaking. The door to his quarters hissed open, and Commander Drazkul entered, his scaled face twisted in frustration. "You realize what happens if you don't fight?" The commander's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of agitation. "The sovereign himself is watching today. Then let him watch me not fight," Velik replied softly. The commander's exoskeleton clattered as he paced. "You humans are incomprehensible. You win, you earn privileges, eventually freedom. Is that not worth killing for?" "Not anymore." A shadow appeared in the doorway, a slender figure with iridescent skin that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. Maris, a Lamidian. Her species was known across the galaxy for their empathic abilities and their status as the Kavari's most trusted servants. "Commander," she spoke, her voice like liquid silver. "Allow me to speak with the human." Drazkul clicked his mandibles in annoyance but stepped aside. "Make it quick. The sovereign doesn't like to wait." When the commander left, Maris approached Velik cautiously. Unlike most Lumidians he'd seen, her head tendrils were braided with metallic rings, and a pattern of scars ran along her left arm, unusual for a species typically kept from harm's way. "I've watched all your fights," she said, keeping her distance. Velik finally looked at her. "Come to convince me to kill again?" "No." Her skin rippled with colors. "I've come to offer something else, a substitution." Velik laughed bitterly. "They don't allow substitutions in death matches." "There's no rule against it," Maris countered. "The Kavari value entertainment above all, and I believe I can provide that." "Why would you fight for me? Your kind are privileged, protected." Maris's skin darkened to a deep indigo. "Not all of us, some of us are. Experiments, bred for different purposes." She rolled up her sleeve further, revealing more scars, surgical marks, and what appeared to be combat wounds. "I was designed to fight, but kept in reserve. A prototype. And now you want to die for a human you don't know?" "No," Maris said, her eyes reflecting the dim light of the room. "I want to fight for a human who refuses to fight. There's power in that choice. Power the Kavari don't understand." The final call blared through the speakers again. "They'll kill us both," Velik warned. Maris reached for the combat bracelet on his wrist, her fingers hovering over it. "Not if I win, and not if we give them a story they've never seen before." She produced a small device and pressed it against the bracelet. It clicked open. "The sovereign loves novelty above all things." Velik stared at the open bracelet. "What's your plan?" "I fight in your place. If I win, I demand a prize. Your freedom." "And if you lose?" Maris's skin pulsed with a deep crimson glow. "Then at least you didn't compromise your soul one more time." She slipped the bracelet onto her own wrist. "The Lumidian, who fought for a human. They'll tell stories about us, regardless of the outcome." The arena roared again, impatient. "Last chance, contestant 7734. Maris extended her hand. "What do you say, Velik? Shall we give the Kavari something they've never seen before?" Velik looked at her outstretched hand, then at the open door. In the corridor beyond, the path to the arena waited, as did what might be their only chance at something more than mere survival. The arena gates parted with a thunderous groan. The crowd's roar died to confused murmurs as Maris stepped onto the sand, her skin shifting to a defiant gold. "This is not contestant 7734. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "This is..." "I am Maris of the Lumidian Collective," she declared, her voice amplified by the arena's acoustics. "I stand in place of the human who refuses to fight." A ripple of shock swept through the stadium. Lumidians were servants, diplomats, advisors, never fighters. In the royal box, the sovereign's massive form leaned forward, 6 clawed hands gripping the railing of his viewing platform. "Interesting." The sovereign's voice rumbled through the arena's speakers. "The rules do not forbid substitution. What says the human? Does he accept this unusual arrangement?" All eyes turned to the contestant's entrance where Velik now stood, guards flanking him. The human's face remained impassive as he stepped forward. "I accept her offer," Velik announced, "but I stand witness to the consequences." The sovereign's compound eyes gleamed. "Let it be so. Bring forth the challenger." The opposite gate opened, and a massive Gronk warrior stomped out, standing nearly 3 meters tall with armored plates covering its gray hide. The creature bellowed a challenge that shook the arena walls. Clutched in its forearms were traditional Gronk weapons, a spiked club, a barbed whip, a curved blade, and a spiked shield. "Gorvin the Annihilator," the announcer proclaimed, "undefeated in 17 consecutive bouts." Maris looked small and fragile by comparison. The guards thrust a selection of weapons toward her, standard issue for arena combatants. She selected only a short blade and a lightweight shield. From the royal box, the sovereign made a sound like grinding stones, the Kavari equivalent of laughter. "The Lumidian has courage, but courage without strength is merely a pleasant garnish on a doomed meal." Velik was escorted to a holding area at the edge of the arena. "You don't have to do this," he said as Maris approached. "Yes, I do," she replied, her voice low. "Watch closely, Velik. This is about more than just fighting." The combat horn sounded and Gorvin charged immediately, all 4 arms swinging his weapons in a deadly synchronized attack. The crowd roared, expecting a quick end to this foolish substitution. But Maris moved like flowing water. One moment she was in the path of the descending club, the next she was 3 meters away, her movements impossibly fast. The Gronk's momentum carried him forward as his weapons struck empty sand. "Impossible," muttered a guard beside Velik. "Lumidians don't move like that." "Most don't," Velik replied, understanding dawning. She wasn't lying about being an experiment. Gorvin recovered quickly and unleashed his whip, the barbed tip cracking through the air. Maris didn't try to dodge this time. Instead, she caught the whip on her shield and yanked hard. The surprised Gronk stumbled forward off balance for a crucial moment. Maris moved in, her blade flashing once, twice. Dark fluid sprayed across the sand as she severed one of the Gronk's secondary arms at the joint. The crowd gasped, then erupted in appreciative howls. "First blood to the Lumidian," the announcer declared. The Gronk roared in pain and rage, dropping his whip and swinging wildly with his remaining weapons. Maris danced between the attacks, her body flowing like liquid mercury, her blade finding gaps in the Gronk's natural armor. In the royal box, the sovereign was no longer laughing. He leaned forward, all 6 eyes fixed intently on the improbable battle below. "She's going to win," Velik breathed. The guard snorted. "Gorvan has never been defeated. This is merely prolonging the inevitable." But Velik saw what the guard didn't. The precise calculation behind every one of Maris's movements, the way she was systematically weakening the larger opponent, rather than going for a killing blow. This wasn't just fighting. This was a performance, a statement, and a message to the sovereign himself. The battle continued, sand spraying in all directions as the combatants clashed again and again. Maris took a glancing blow from the club that sent her tumbling, but she rolled back to her feet, her skin flashing crimson with pain before returning to its golden battle hue. From his position, Velik could see what was happening. Maris wasn't just fighting for her life, she was fighting for something more. Every move was deliberately visible to the crowd, every display of skill precisely calibrated. She was showing the Kavari something they'd never seen before, a Lumidian who could fight and fight well. And in doing so, she was changing the story. Blood and sand clung to Maris as she circled her wounded opponent. Gorvan, now missing 2 of his 4 arms, bellowed in frustration, his remaining weapons swinging with desperate force. The crowd had fallen silent, their typical bloodlust transformed into something like reverence. They were witnessing the impossible, a Lumidian dominating a Gronk warrior in open combat. In the royal box, the sovereign beckoned to his chief advisor, an ancient Kavari with faded scales and milky eyes. "What am I seeing, Vexmore?" the sovereign demanded. "A revelation, exalted one," Vexmore replied. "The genetic program with the Lumidians. It appears to have exceeded expectations in ways we were not informed of." Below, Maris executed a perfect feint that left Gorvan overextended. Her blade slipped between armored plates and found vulnerable flesh. "Finish it," someone in the crowd shouted, and the cry was taken up by others until it became a chant. But Maris stepped back, lowering her weapon. "I claim victory by submission," she declared, her voice carrying across the suddenly hushed arena. The sovereign rose to his full height. "Unusual. Most unusual. The Lumidian claims victory without a kill." His voice resonated through the arena speakers. "Gorvan, do you yield?" The wounded Gronk looked up, pride warring with survival instinct. Finally, he dropped his remaining weapons. "I yield to the superior fighter," he growled. A murmur swept through the crowd. Victories by submission were rare in the Kavari pits. "The battle is concluded," the announcer proclaimed. "Victory to the Lumidian substitute." Maris approached Velik at the edge of the arena, her skin cycling through colors as she regulated her breathing. "You didn't kill him," Velik observed. "That's not why I fought," she replied, wiping blood from her blade. "Killing proves nothing new to the Kavari. Mercy, that's what they don't understand." Guards surrounded them as the sovereign's platform descended to arena level. The massive Kavari ruler studied Maris with undisguised fascination. "Impressive," the sovereign said. "A Lumidian who fights with such skill, such innovation." He turned his compound eyes toward Velik. "And a human who refuses to fight yet finds another way to survive. Fascinating pair." "I fought for a prize," Maris stated boldly. "The human's freedom." The sovereign made that grinding sound again. Laughter. "Bold. Very bold. But tell me, little Lumidian, why should I grant this?" "Because," Maris replied, her skin settling into a calm azure, "you value that which surprises you above all else. And nothing in your empire is more surprising than what you've witnessed today." The sovereign's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "True. Very true." He gestured to his guards. "Remove the human's tracker. He is free to leave the arena." A guard approached Velik with a device that deactivated the subcutaneous tracker. All fighters were implanted with. "However," the sovereign continued, "he is not free to leave the planet, not yet. I find myself curious." He turned to Maris. "You will fight again, Lumidian, and the human will watch. Together, you present a narrative I find entertaining." With that, the sovereign's platform rose back to the royal box, leaving Velik and Maris surrounded by guards. "What just happened?" Velik asked as they were escorted from the arena. "Politics," Maris replied quietly. "The sovereign never does anything without calculation. We're now pieces in a larger game." They were taken to new quarters, still within the arena complex, but far more comfortable than the fighters' cells. Food was brought, medical attention offered. Through the window, they could see the sprawling metropolis of Kazul, the Kavari, capital city with its twisted spires and pulsing energy conduits. "I'm not free," Velik observed, staring out at the city. "Just a different kind of prisoner." "But you're not being forced to kill anymore," Maris pointed out. "That's something." Velik turned to her. "And you? What happens to you now?" Maris's skin darkened to a thoughtful indigo. "I've revealed myself. The Lumidians who created me, the ones who were experimenting with our genetics, they'll know I've exposed their work. Are you in danger from them? Perhaps, but I'm more valuable to the sovereign alive than dead, and that gives us opportunities." "Opportunities for what?" Maris approached the window, her reflection overlaying the cityscape beyond. There are others like me, hidden throughout the Empire, Lumidians who weren't meant to be servants or ornaments but something else entirely. She turned to Velik. And there are more humans who, like you, refuse to be what the Kaveri want them to be. Understanding dawned on Velik's face. You're not just fighting for me, are you? No, Maris admitted. I'm fighting for something larger, something that began long before we met. She held out her hand, skin glowing with an inner light. Will you help me? Velik looked at her outstretched hand, then back at the sprawling city. I refuse to fight for them, he said slowly. But I never said I wouldn't fight against them. He took her hand, and as their fingers interlaced, a small light on the wall, one they hadn't noticed before, blinked from red to green. They were being watched. The game had already begun. The summons came 3 days later. A Kaveri official delivered formal attire to their quarters, sleek ceremonial garments unlike the crude uniforms given to arena fighters. The sovereign requests your presence at tonight's banquet, the official announced, mandibles clicking with distaste at having to address a human and a Lumidian directly. What's the occasion? Velik asked, examining the dark blue fabric with silver threading. The armistice celebration, the official replied. The anniversary of our victory over the Terran coalition. Velik's jaw tightened. The so-called armistice had been a surrender, forced upon the human colonies after the Kaveri bombardment of New Chicago. 2 million dead in a single day. We'll be ready, Maris answered before Velik could respond. The official departed with a dismissive flick of his tail. When they were alone, Maris's skin rippled with concern. This is unexpected. The sovereign rarely invites non-Kaveri to state functions. We're not invited guests, Velik said bitterly. We're entertainment, trophies to parade before his allies. Perhaps, Maris agreed, but trophies placed in plain sight can observe much. She gestured subtly toward the surveillance light in the corner. And there are ways to speak without being heard. That evening, they were escorted through the palace's vast corridors. Crystal formations grew from the ceilings, bioluminescent, and pulsing in time with the distant thrum of the city's power core. Elite Kaveri guards flanked them, their ceremonial armor gleaming with the same blue-green bioluminescence. The grand hall was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows 50 meters above. Hundreds of Kaveri dignitaries mingled beneath floating, light orbs, their exoskeletons polished to a high shine. Among them moved servants of various species, mostly Lumidians, but also representatives from a dozen conquered worlds. Ah, my arena champions. The sovereign's voice boomed as they entered. All 6 of his eyes focused on them as he descended from his elevated throne. Come. Let my allies see the human who refuses to fight and the Lumidian who fights in his place. Circle formed around them as the sovereign guided them through the crowd. Velik felt the weight of hundreds of compound eyes studying him, some curious, others contemptuous. A peculiar pair, observed a Kaveri female, her exoskeleton adorned with rare metals indicating high military rank. Admiral Zalthrex, she introduced herself. I commanded the fleet at New Chicago. Velik's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Maris sensed his tension and subtly placed her hand on his arm, her skin cooling to a calming blue. Admiral, Velik managed through gritted teeth, offering the slightest bow as protocol demanded. I've watched recordings of your arena fights. The Admiral continued, seeming not to notice or perhaps enjoying Velik's discomfort. 27 victories. Impressive for a species we believe to be physically inferior. The human skill was never in question, the sovereign interjected. It was his will that finally broke. Fascinating, is it not? To possess the ability to kill, yet refuse to use it. Weakness, another Kaveri official spat. Or evolution beyond your understanding, Maris countered, her voice soft but carrying. A shocked silence fell over the gathering. No servant species would dare speak so boldly to the Kaveri elite. The sovereign's mandibles clicked rapidly, laughter. See, this is why I keep them near. Such unexpected responses. He gestured to a server who brought 4 goblets of luminescent blue liquid. a toast to the contradictions that make existence interesting. As the banquet progressed, Velik and Maris were separated, each drawn into different conversations with curious Kavari officials. Velik found himself cornered by a group of military commanders eager to discuss human battle tactics. "Your species fights without proper hierarchy," one complained. "We adapt," Velik replied carefully. "Humans function best when initiative is encouraged at all levels." Across the room, he caught glimpses of Maris engaged in what appeared to be intense discussion with several ancient Kavari scientists. Her skin shifted through patterns he hadn't seen before, complex geometric shapes rather than simple color changes. "A message," whispered a voice beside him. Velik turned to find a Lumidian server offering a tray of delicacies. This one's skin was a muted gray with faint patterns barely visible beneath the surface like Maris's but more subdued. "What?" Velik asked, pretending to select food from the tray. "Not all eyes that watch you belong to the Kavari," the server murmured, then glided away to serve other guests. Later, as the celebration reached its peak, the sovereign called for silence. A massive hologram appeared in the center of the hall, a recreation of the bombardment of New Chicago. Velik watched in horror as the memory of humanity's greatest defeat was replayed as entertainment. The sovereign raised his goblet again. "To peace through strength." The gathered Kavari roared their approval. Velik stood motionless, refusing to drink. Across the room, Maris also held her goblet untouched. The sovereign noticed. All 6 eyes fixed on Velik. "You disapprove of our celebration, human?" The hall fell silent. "I mourn the necessity of such measures," Velik replied diplomatically. "Necessity?" The sovereign's voice was dangerously soft. "Elaborate." Velik met the ruler's gaze. New Chicago was a civilian settlement. 2 million non-combatants. There was no military necessity. Murmurs of outrage rippled through the gathering. "Yet it ended the war," the sovereign countered. "One decisive strike instead of prolonged conflict. By your own logic of refusing to fight, shouldn't you approve of actions that bring combat to a swift conclusion?" "There's a difference between refusing to fight and massacring those who cannot," Velik said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Guards shifted, hands moving to weapons. The sovereign rose to his full height, towering over Velik. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, that grinding stone-on-stone sound that echoed through the hall. This is why I keep you, human. Such moral complexity, so different from our clarity." He waved dismissively at the guards. "The celebration continues. Let my guests enjoy the contradictions of the universe." As the tension dissipated, Maris appeared at Velik's side, her skin a warning amber. "You take dangerous risks," she whispered. "No more than you," he replied, nodding toward the scientists she had been speaking with. "What was that about?" "Seeds planted," she murmured. "There are fractures in Kavari society deeper than they let outsiders see. Scientific factions that question military dominance. Religious minorities who oppose the harvesting of sentient species. Potential allies? Potential chaos," she corrected. "And in chaos, opportunity." As they spoke, the sovereign's chief advisor, Vexmore, approached them slowly, his ancient form supported by a hovering mobility device. "The sovereign is intrigued by your partnership," the old Kavari wheezed. "So unusual, so symbolic." His milky eyes fixed on Maris. "One who was bred to serve yet fights. One who was bred to fight yet refuses." He leaned closer. "The arena awaits you again tomorrow. The sovereign has arranged a special combat, one that will test more than just your skill with weapons." With that cryptic warning, Vexmore glided away, leaving Velik and Maris to exchange troubled glances. "What did he mean by that?" Velik asked. Maris's skin darkened to midnight blue. "I think we're about to find out just how much the sovereign knows about us and what we're planning." Around them, the celebration continued, but now every laugh, every toast seemed to carry a hidden threat, and somewhere in the crowd, Velik was certain other eyes were watching. Eyes that belonged to the resistance Maris had hinted at. The question was, would they act in time? The arena looked different this time. Gone was the circular fighting pit, replaced by a sprawling landscape of artificial terrain. Rocky outcroppings, small copses of stunted trees, and what appeared to be the ruins of a human settlement. A simulation of the new Chicago outskirts, Velik realized as they were led to a viewing platform. They're mocking us. Maris said nothing, but her skin fluctuated between deep indigo and flashes of crimson. She wore lightweight combat armor, now more sophisticated than what she'd had in her first arena fight. The Sovereign clearly valued her as a combatant. Honored guests, the announcer's voice boomed. Today the Sovereign presents a special exhibition match, a tactical simulation to commemorate our victory and ongoing dominance. The royal box was full today, the Sovereign surrounded by the highest-ranking officials from the previous night's banquet. Admiral Zalthrex occupied a position of honor at his right hand. Our champion, the Lamidian Maris, will face a squad of 5 elite Kavari warriors. The announcer continued. They will hunt her through the ruins, and she will demonstrate the futility of resistance. Velik tensed. 5 against 1, that's exactly what I expected, Maris interrupted. The Sovereign is testing me, testing us. A guard approached with a selection of weapons. Maris chose carefully, a short-bladed weapon similar to the one she'd used before, a compact energy pistol, and what appeared to be some kind of utility belt. Combat begins in 60 seconds, the announcer declared. Spectators, activate your tracking visors to follow the action throughout the arena. Velik was handed a device that fit over his eyes, projecting a 3-dimensional overlay of the arena, with heat signatures marking the combatants' positions. This is suicide, he hissed to Maris. You can't take on 5 Kavari elites alone. Maris's skin settled into a calm, steady blue. Who said I'm alone? She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Remember what I told you about others like me? Before Velik could respond, a horn sounded. Maris squeezed his hand once, then sprinted into the artificial ruins. The 5 Kavari warriors entered from different points around the perimeter, each nearly 2 meters tall, their exoskeletons enhanced with combat plating, their compound eyes protected by polarized visors. They moved with the precision of lifelong predators. Through his tracking visor, Velik watched as Maris darted through the ruins, seemingly at random. But there was purpose in her movements. She was drawing the Kavari warriors into a complex pattern, separating them from each other. Clever, muttered one of the guards beside Velik. She's using their hunting instincts against them. They'll each want the kill for themselves. The first encounter came quickly. A Kavari warrior cornered Maris in what appeared to be the shell of a human dwelling. The crowd roared as the warrior leveled its weapon, a neural disruptor designed to incapacitate without killing. Maris didn't try to escape. Instead, she raised her hands in apparent surrender. The warrior approached, mandibles clicking in triumph. Then, impossibly, Maris's skin changed, not just in color, but in texture and apparent density. For a brief moment, she seemed to flicker like a faulty hologram. The Kavari warrior hesitated, confused. That moment was all Maris needed. She lunged forward, her short blade finding the gap between the warrior's chest plates. The Kavari collapsed, incapacitated but alive. What was that? Velik demanded of no one in particular. In the royal box, the Sovereign had risen to his feet, all 6 eyes fixed intently on the tracking display. Maris moved deeper into the ruins. Through the visor, Velik saw her approach what appeared to be a central plaza, and then her heat signature seemed to split in 2. Malfunction, grumbled the guard, tapping his own visor. But Velik understood. Somehow, Maris was creating a duplicate heat signature, a decoy. The Kavari tracking systems couldn't distinguish between them. 2 more warriors converged on the false signal. As they closed in, something else happened. A 3rd heat signature appeared, this one emerging from what appeared to be a hidden compartment beneath the ruins, a figure that moved with the same fluid grace as Maris. Another Lumidian, Velik breathed. He glanced up at the royal box. The sovereign was now conferring urgently with Vexmore, gesturing at his own tracking display. The new Lumidian, somehow, concealed from the crowd's direct view by the ruins, attacked the two Kavari from behind. The warriors went down in seconds, their neural disruptors clattering to the ground. Murmurs of confusion spread through the arena. The crowd could see the warriors falling, but not what was causing it. Technical difficulties with the arena sensors. The announcer declared, "Please stand by." Velik knew better. This wasn't a malfunction, it was a plan unfolding. Somehow Maris had arranged for allies to be hidden within the arena itself. The fourth warrior, realizing something was wrong, took up a defensive position atop a rocky outcropping with good visibility. Maris, the real Maris, approached openly, her skin. "Face me honorably," she called out, her voice carried through the arena's audio system. The warrior took aim with a more lethal weapon, a plasma rifle that would end the fight permanently. But before he could fire, the ground beneath him seemed to give way. He tumbled backward, disappearing from view. In the royal box, chaos erupted. The sovereign was bellowing orders. Guards rushed toward the arena proper. "What's happening?" Velik asked the nearest guard, who looked equally confused. "The arena, it's been compromised somehow." Only one Kavari warrior remained, the squad leader, judging by his more elaborate armor. He had taken position in the center of the ruins, back against a wall, weapons ready. Through his visor, Velik saw something remarkable, heat signatures appearing throughout the ruins. 3, 5, then a dozen Lumidians, all moving with the same fluid grace as Maris, converging on the final warrior. The leader fought valiantly, disabling 2 of the Lumidians before Maris herself appeared behind him, pressing her blade to the vulnerable joint at the back of his neck. "Yield!" she commanded. The warrior dropped his weapons. Silence fell over the arena. Then a single voice called out from somewhere in the crowd, not in the harsh consonants of Kavari speech, but in the flowing syllables of the Lumidian language. Others took up the call, first a few, then dozens. Luminous beings throughout the arena rising to their feet. Servants, attendants, concubines, advisors. The Lumidians who had always been present but never truly seen. In the royal box, the sovereign stood rigid, surrounded by guards. Below, in the artificial ruins, Maris looked directly up at him, her skin glowing with a blinding white light that seemed to ripple outward to every Lumidian in the arena. "What is this?" the sovereign demanded, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent stadium. Maris's voice responded, calm and clear. "This is the consequence of believing that beautiful things cannot also be dangerous." And then, as if by some unspoken signal, every light in the arena went out. The emergency generators kicked in 30 seconds later, bathing the arena in a sickly amber glow. Velik found himself suddenly free. The guards who had flanked him were gone, rushing to protect the royal box where the sovereign and his advisors were being hurriedly evacuated. Chaos ruled the stands. Most Kavari officials were being ushered toward the exits while others formed defensive formations, weapons drawn. The ordinary citizens in the upper tiers pushed and shoved in their panic to escape. And throughout it all, Lumidians moved with calm purpose, some guiding confused spectators to safety, others simply vanishing into the shadows. Velik sprinted down to the arena floor, vaulting over a barrier. He had to find Maris. The artificial ruins were now a genuine maze, made more confusing by the emergency lighting. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with a Kavari guard. The guard raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a blur of luminous blue knocked him sideways. "Maris?" Velik called out. "Not quite," replied the Lumidian who had saved him. This one was male, his skin pattern simpler than Maris's intricate designs. "I'm Kalen. She sent me to find you." "What's happening?" Velik demanded as they crouched in the shadows of a ruined wall. "Is this a revolution?" Kalen's skin shifted to a thoughtful purple. "We prefer to call it an awakening. For generations, the Lumidians have served as the perfect assistants, empathic, intelligent, beautiful, and utterly compliant. The Kavari thought they had engineered the perfect servant species, but they made a mistake, Velik guessed. Several, Kalen confirmed. The first was breeding empaths who could sense each other's pain across great distances. The second was assuming beauty and intelligence couldn't coexist with strength. And the third? He paused, his skin rippling with something like pride. Was capturing humans. A distant explosion rocked the arena, sending dust cascading from the artificial ruins. Come, Kalen urged. Maris is waiting. They wove through the labyrinth of broken structures, occasionally passing other Lumidians moving with purpose. Some carried wounded comrades, others Kavari weapons. None showed fear. They found Maris in what appeared to be a command center, hastily established in the central plaza. Holographic displays hovered in the air, showing the status of various operations throughout the city. A dozen Lumidians worked at different stations, their skin patterns shifting in complex sequences as they communicated without words. Velik. Maris greeted him, her skin brightening momentarily before settling back to a focused blue. How you planned this all along, Velik said, realization dawning. The arena fight, the banquet, all of it was positioning. For years, she confirmed. The Lumidian resistance needed a catalyst, something to show both our people and the Kavari what we're capable of. Something visible, public. And I was part of your plan? Maris's skin darkened with what might have been regret. Not initially, but when I saw a human who refused to fight on principle, even at the cost of his own life, I knew you were something special, something that could change the narrative. Another explosion, closer this time. The holographic displays flickered. The Kavari military is responding, reported a Lumidian at one of the stations. Orbital platforms are being activated. As expected, Maris replied calmly. Proceed to Phase 3. Velik grabbed her arm. This is insanity. The Kavari will slaughter you all. They have planetary defenses, orbital weapons. And we have their codes, Maris interrupted. Who do you think has been managing their security systems for the past century? Who whispers in their ears as advisors? Who raises their children? She gestured to a holographic display showing the palace defense grid going dark sector by sector. This isn't just happening here, she continued. Across 27 worlds in the Kavari Empire, Lumidians are rising simultaneously. Not with violence, we're not built for war, but with something far more powerful. What's that? Velik asked. System control, Kalen answered. Life support, communications, navigation, security. We're not taking their empire by force, Maris explained. We're simply showing them that it never truly belonged to them in the first place. A new figure entered the command center. Admiral Zal Threx, the Kavari commander responsible for the New Chicago massacre. She was surrounded by Lumidian guards, her weapons and communication devices removed. The human, she hissed upon seeing. Velik, I should have known. Your kind always brings chaos. Actually, Maris corrected her, stepping forward. He's the one who showed us another way. She turned to Velik. The Sovereign wanted spectacle, the human who wouldn't fight and the alien who fought for him. But what if there's a third option? Neither violence nor submission, but transformation? The Admiral's mandibles clicked in contempt. The Sovereign will crush this pathetic rebellion. You've revealed yourselves now. All Lumidians will be purged? No, Maris replied with serene confidence. Because we've already uploaded the truth about the genetic experiments, about New Chicago, about everything, to every communication node in the Empire. Your own people are beginning to ask questions. She gestured to another display showing crowds gathering outside the Imperial Palace, not in panic, but in protest. Among the Kavari citizens were Lumidians and members of other subjugated species, standing together. Admiral, Maris continued, you're here to negotiate the terms of transition, not surrender, coexistence. The Admiral's compound eyes narrowed. And if I refuse, then you can explain to your people why their life support systems are failing while ours remain operational, Kalen said matter-of-factly. We've designed the systems, maintained them for generations. We know their weaknesses. Velik watched. This exchange in stunned silence. The Lumidians weren't fighting in the traditional sense, they were leveraging their position within the Empire's infrastructure to force change. "What's my role in all this?" he finally asked Maris. Her skin shifted to a warm golden hue. "You're the symbol, Velik, the human who refused to fight, who showed their strength in that choice, the one who inspired an alien to fight for him, and in doing so, revealed a different kind of courage." Another Lumidian rushed into the command center. "The Sovereign is requesting direct communication. He wishes to speak with the leadership." Maris nodded. "Put him through." A massive hologram materialized in the center of the plaza. The Sovereign, his exoskeleton no longer polished but scarred from what appeared to be a hasty evacuation. His 6 eyes burned with fury. "You betray centuries of Kavari generosity," he began, his voice trembling with rage. "We elevated..." "Two slaves," Maris interrupted calmly. "Beautiful, useful slaves. But we were never meant to be that, and deep down your scientists knew it. Why else create the experimental lineages like mine? You were curious about our potential, even as you feared it." The Sovereign's mandibles clicked rapidly. "What are your demands?" "Recognition," Maris replied. "Autonomy for Lumidian worlds, representation in the Imperial Council, and," she glanced at Velik, "reparations to the human colonies, beginning with the survivors of New Chicago." "Impossible," the Sovereign spat. "Then watch," Maris said simply, and nodded to one of her operators. Across the city, every light, every power system, every transportation network went dark simultaneously. Only their command center remained illuminated. "This is happening on every Kavari world," Maris explained. "Not destruction, we could have done that easily, but demonstration. In exactly 1 hour, everything will resume function. Consider it a sample of your new reality." The Sovereign's image flickered as backup systems engaged. "You would destroy everything we've built?" "No," Maris countered. "We would transform it into something better, something where strength doesn't require domination." She turned to Velik, her skin glowing with an inner light that seemed to pulse in time with her words. "That's what this human taught me. Sometimes the greatest courage isn't in fighting your enemies. It's in refusing to become what they want you to be." The Sovereign's hologram stared at them both, his anger giving way to something like bewilderment. Finally he spoke. "I will consider your terms. 1 hour." The transmission ended. Admiral Zalthrex looked at Maris with newfound respect. "You planned this for how long?" "Generations," Maris replied. "Patience is something you learn when you're designed to serve." Outside, the sounds of conflict had died away. Reports flooded in from across the Empire, similar scenes playing out on dozens of worlds. Not violent revolution, but systematic demonstration of Lumidian control over the infrastructure that kept the Empire functioning. "Will it work?" Velik asked quietly, as the command center buzzed with activity around them. Maris's skin shifted through a complex pattern before settling on a peaceful blue. "The Kavari are pragmatic above all else. They understand power. Today we've shown them a kind they didn't know existed." She led him to a viewport overlooking the city. In the darkness of the power outage, the Lumidians below were visible as points of bioluminescent light, moving through the streets like stars. "You know," Velik said, watching the scene, "on Earth, there was an ancient human saying, 'The pen is mightier than the sword.'" "I like that," Maris replied. "What does it mean?" "That words, ideas, and intelligence can achieve what violence cannot." He turned to her. "You could have killed them all. You had the power. And become what we despised?" She shook her head, her tendrils swaying gently. "No. You showed us another way, Velik. By refusing to fight, you fought the system itself." As they stood there, the first communication nodes throughout the city began to reactivate, not returning control to the Kavari, but broadcasting the truth to every citizen. About the experiments on Lumidians, about the true history of the war with humans, about all the secrets the Empire had kept. "This is just the beginning," Maris said softly. Change won't come overnight. But it will come, Velik finished. And without the bloodshed my people would have demanded. In the command center behind them, Admiral Zalthrex was already engaged. In preliminary negotiations with the Lumidian leadership, her initial contempt replaced by grudging respect. What will you do now? Maris asked. Return to the human colonies? Velik looked at her, at the city beyond, at the Empire being transformed not through violence, but through revelation. No, he decided. I think I'll stay. After all, he smiled, the first genuine smile since his capture months ago. Someone needs to keep fighting for peace. Maris's skin glowed with a warm, radiant gold as she took his hand. Together, they turned back toward the command center where the future of an empire, and perhaps of all their species, was being rewritten. Not through battle, but through the courage to imagine something better. And in the darkness of the Kavari, capital, points of light continued to spread, one connection at a time, illuminating a path forward that none of them had dared to dream possible. Until a human refused to fight,